So I did, I would have thought there would be more photographs, but there weren't. I'm giving you mise-en-scene. I went on and did a sculpture that looked like this, that to me, it's like a 4x4 tinsel curtain in the corner of the room, which is very like bar room. And I was just in Miami a week ago, and I walked into like an all-male review, 6 to midnight, and there it was. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, they're still going on. I made this one. It was called Silver Jackie, which is sort of a Warhol reference, and also the word Jackie comes up in the movie Midnight Cowboy. And at that, I only ever heard it in Midnight Cowboy, maybe Augusta, you heard it back in the day, but they made it sound like Jackie was the equivalent of like a fag. Dustin Hoffman says to John Boyd, like, oh, get out of that cop. You look like every Jackie out on 42nd Street. Which, to me, it's like, that other piece, this piece I call Deuce Lingo. The Deuce was 42nd Street. I was very involved in like City of Night and that kind of essence, because I'm still, even in the 90s, sort of referencing a 50s mentality. I did this little thing, and how all this stuff sort of relates to photography for me is like, these are little sets, you know what I mean? Like, I did wind up shooting people using this as a backdrop, and it's all part of like a photographer's mentality. This was referencing a room, I don't know if you remember the fruit set up on the table, the kitchen table. I wanted to go right back to that time in 1983, and so I remade it. And when you were on this set, you felt like you were at that place, but it was clearly not a, it was not that. This is a detail. There was another half of that piece. It was just like going back to a time that I lived in. These are soaps, like Octagon soap. Do you know what Octagon soap is? That really crummy, like harsh soap. And I don't think I have a detail of it. No, I don't have a detail. I took those things that you use in woodshop to sign your wood project, like a pounded on all with the name, and it just, all these soaps are inscribed with things like, you know, guy at the bus station, tall guy in the park, Rusty, Mark, guy in the dunes, guy at a peep show, like that. Like, it was sort of trying to give you every single, like, everything I could, every sexual encounter I could remember. This is another like sort of walking piece. It's all the stars on Hollywood Boulevard that don't have names. So it's a full strip. It's just, I took a disposable camera, walked down Hollywood Boulevard at about 4:30 where the raking shadows, also known as the golden hour, and just photographed all the blank stars. And I sort of thought, like, I'm going to get to the end, I'll bring it to the photo booth place and ask them not to cut it. And then that'll make it a strip, and it, you know, it looks like a movie, it looks like this, and it sort of is a elegy to, I think, all the people that came to Hollywood and never made it somehow. So. Edward Hopper, I was sort of into that whole thing, and I started making these pieces that sort of were exercising influence or acknowledging influence, and making pieces that look like when you put up a million postcards or stuff you cut out of magazines on your wall. I always like how that looks. These were more formalized. It's like a whole catalog mounted to canvas in a very archival way. It winds up being another narrative of his work, but also all the things seen at once. The book opened up, you know what I mean? This one you can't really see, but it's the Diane Arbus monograph, which was a big moment for me, like one of the compelling things in my life, like a before and after moment of like encountering that book, changed my life. These are all the title pages, so you can't really see, but there's a tiny script here that will say, like, you know, boy in Washington Square Park with hand grenade, or a transvestite at her birthday party. And so you just get the titles are pure poetry, just alone. And then the nice thing that I didn't even see coming is when you see the piece in real life, you get like a ghost image from the prints behind. And it's very minimal and white, and also a big, Arbus was a big influence of mine. or not influence, I wouldn't say you can see influence so much, but she's in there someplace. Posters, this was, you know, if you went on 8th Street back in the day, there were poster mats, and you'd flip through the big black and white posters, Mae West, Jimmy Cagney, Elvis Presley. This was a good one of Elvis Presley, and it's just the slice of, you know, the hair. And it's just pinned with a single thing. So all this work, like I show you one of these, but then there were like 20 other posters cut up, charts, things like that. I'm just showing you. Things like this, it was a piece of red flock velvet wallpaper that looked really chromy, and I just hung this picture of the Ronettes, who is another big thing. As biggest guy in August to me is the Ronettes, so this is like an homage to the Ronettes. It's backwards though, because there's also, this is backwards, sorry, it's vaguely, not that I cut it, it's the red velvet is exactly how I pulled it out of the trash, but to me it sort of looked like the United States. Like, if it was flipped, this would be Massachusetts and Florida and Texas, and they're in Hollywood. Or, you know, California. James Dean, this is like a fan magazine of James Dean that I mounted and actually called this piece like Self-Portrait. And it's a magazine after he died, so it's got the appointment with death, the legend. It has him like growing old because he did like, you know, you see the whole thing, you see him as a sculptor, you see him as this, you see the old queen looking at him, playing the bongos. Like, it's got it all, and it's sort of like a, you know, melancholy genius in the thing, and then I call the whole thing Self-Portrait. This was a huge piece, kind of as big as to the window, and between it, also just movie star portraits from like a fan magazine in the 50s. And it was, you know, it also was a thing that, like, you know, you'd see in barrooms at the time. And in Boston, there was an old place, I forget what it was called, but in the Combat Zone, it was covered with movie star pictures. And I would always sit in barrooms and think like, oh no, that's art. Somebody should do that in a gallery. And then I finally, you know, like when I had the opportunity, I started to do it.